Stephen Willis. We're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics. The fan, by the fan, and the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah. Right now. The podcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the POMcast. I'm your Stephen Willis, and I am very appreciative of you joining. Ole Miss a loser last night, 72-63 to Florida. Florida had a 14-0 run at the very end to win the game. Ole Miss leading with very little time left and saw it all evaporate. Ole Miss has a jump shooting problem, and it might be fixed. I mean, Schuler can get hot, but he's not a shooter. And Ole Miss desperately needs a shooter to end that defense, or else they'll just go down on Romello White or whoever's there and cause kinds of problems and make it difficult on the Rebs. But 72-63 for the winner over Ole Miss, using a 14-0 run in the closing minute of the game to win. And if you count the margin, Ole Miss lost by 9. That means Ole Miss was up 5 waning minutes of the game. That isn't good. That isn't the way you close. They desperately lack shooters. I mean, that can be said at this. They're 11 games in. They're like a third of the way the season, or maybe more than that. They desperately lack shooters. An inside game is a way to trade 3 for 2. So, let's get this out of the way. You can follow on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis, at @OlePositively. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. The podcast is also available on my YouTube as well, but you know my name. You can search. And you can catch us on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss, and you can catch us on Twitch at Positively Miss, all one word. You can catch us on all the audio podcasts at Apple Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. I think those are the major ones. I hope I didn't forget. You can catch us on some low-level podcatchers as well. We just don't have time to name them here. But again, my name is Stephen Willis. I am the host of the POMcast, and I am very happy that you are joining us. I'm out looking at the busy day in Central Florida, checking out palm trees. It's about 60 degrees right now. It's kind of a brisk morning, but if you're going through much worse than that, I apologize. Not everybody can broadcast from the palatial Central Florida studios. On today's show, as we've already started, we're going to talk about Ole Miss failure at the end of the game to out against Florida, a game that they should have won. We're going to talk about the exit interviews. We're going to continue them. Unfortunately, it's the D-line day, so we'll get to that in segment 2. And in segment 3, kind of a grab bag. We're going to see what kind of floats my boat. And the desk is in the palatial Central Florida studio. We'll probably talk about the direction toward our goals. So the desk is in the studio. We still have to do painting, still have a camera to buy, and we'll have some hardware to get, but the light's here as well. So we should be able to do lighting tests relatively quickly. So this is really cool. This is all happening. And I'm kind of excited to proceed. Again, let's get back to it. The Ole Miss lost 72-63 to the Florida Gators, and one of the worst 2 minutes I've ever seen in this history. It was genuinely bad, and the meltdown caused them to lose the game. And that's just truth. The meltdown caused them to lose the game. And them losing that game, I think 1-3 now in the SEC. They're 5-4, 6-5 overall. And all the hope that came into this season got destroyed. Now remember, this team preseason had to start and stop because of COVID. They shut down the program for like 2 weeks. So that means other teams are 2 weeks ahead of them. So continuity is going to be hard to build. Knowing exactly what you have is going to be hard to build. You can put stuff, you can get stuff in game, but it's going to be a problem. And the preseason for Ole Miss and COVID affected them. Period. I mean, I don't know how anyone else can say that. Now, I know that some people are going to say, I don't care, just win. I don't want to hear about the labor, show me the baby. I understand that. But you have to context on what is happening. And nobody is making excuses. I haven't heard it from Kermit once. But I will say that, and I will take that on that they're genuinely hurting from their COVID issue and having to shut down the program a little bit further behind. That doesn't change the fact that they're not closing out games, because they're doing it now. They didn't against Wichita State. They didn't against Florida. They're good enough to win these games. They're just not closing out these games. And it could be a problem there's not a dude on the team. Devontae Shuler is supposed to be that dude, but maybe he's a complimentary piece. He's not an alpha. And anyway, Ole Miss lost the game. Bad 2 minutes. We'll move on to exit interviews next. Stephen Willis, POMcast. Stick around.
Only 10% of us enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of are overweight or obese. We spend 6 hours a day in front screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us a start in sports and never stop.
Learn how at activelife.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA, him and my mom, the home they'd always wanted. Michael's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I've been their footsteps and served with pride. And now out of the military, the GI Bills help with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA served us all.
Welcome back, POMcast. It's exit interview time. We're going to talk defensive line. The glaring weak point of the defensive line. And I'm also going to tell you how it affected everything. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to give the defensive line a D. I know everybody going to point at that and say, Steve, you are far too generous. But by the end of the season, Sam Williams was playing with his hand down, and he was in the right spot. So I moved him up from F or minus to D because of Sam Williams. We knew from the beginning the interior defensive line was going to take a huge hit when they lost Josiah, Austria, and Benito. We all knew that. We all figured that. I mean, it'd take no analyst ability to basically point that out. But the defensive line this year genuinely struggled. They played a lot of three-man front. And KD Hill perform. He did his best. I mean, that's the best way you can say that. But the two ends, Ryder Anderson and T.T. Tisdale, it was just struggling. There was a lot of situations where teams would play a max protect game where they'd leave a tight end in it, and we would rush three and end up not getting pressure because they could team all three of them. The reason against Mississippi State, we didn't rush three, rush four, and you didn't know where that fourth one was coming from. Prevent double teams. But it's starting to happen a little bit towards the end of the year. But lack of ability to get pressure or really stop the run. They did a better job against the run than you think. That right there caused a ripple effect that affected the linebackers and affected the safeties. That in concert, linebackers asked to do something completely foreign to them, and that is play sideline for their fits as opposed from A gap to B gap, which was a 3-4 Mike McIntyre, which they played relatively well. They had the personnel for it, moved spots, and they kind of clown and played pretty well defensively last year. Those same players, there's going to be a problem. To remember, on that defense, there's Wesley McGriff players, there's Mike McIntyre players, and now there's DJ Durkin players. And hodgepodge, that mixture, just didn't really work out for what we wanted to do. Now, like I said, they played admirably times. They played really well against Indiana, and that was due to having a bunch of walkthroughs. So there was minimalizing busts to where players could play a little bit faster because they were confident in what they were doing. You remember, there was no spring practice and no fall camp. Everything was expedited. So it was very bad for a new defensive coordinator, especially one as multiple as DJ Durkin. And the players eventually, you just didn't have time ability to hey, we can do this. This is the call. And walk through after walk through, they eventually got it down. Played really well against Indiana. And that was using, I think I don't even know his name. He's number 40 on defense. And Tylen Knight is playing some vents. And there's players there that are going to get improved potentially fairly rapidly. I mean, on the defensive line, you have Jamon Gordon and Isaiah Ivan, two defensive linemen that are the top two in the country. So I imagine there's going to be a potential for more four fronts next year. There's also going to be some, but you know what I mean. Now remember, I do a lot of three-man stuff with four-man principle and just let the end be the outside back or the buck or the star. I mean, they're all in the same. It's a 3-4 defense is a 3-4 defense, or 3 defense is a 4-3 defense. But it's who has responsibility. And I mean, if you want it to, you could the safety have the C gap. It's just the way it's drawn up. And that's the problem. That's what you need to realize when we talk about players being asked to do stuff that they weren't asked to do stuff. It's about where the fits are. And it's important for the defense because it confuses the offense. Generally, not when they can just run off tackle, but you know what I mean. That won't be the case next year. You got linebackers, you got safeties, you got 4 stars literally everywhere for that defense. So they're going to get better. And I mean, Tywone Malone is still out there way. He'll be the top rated person in the class if he committed. So I think it's the only one we're going after. There's rumors of a tight end that we're going after as a grad transfer, and they might do another transfer or two. I mean, with the transfers and all the avenues available to build your roster, there is an excited timeline, and there should be. It's not like it used to be where you kind of stuck in the rut and you had to just do reading class and hope you hit enough There's some early players and you would go. And I think that coaches overcomplicate this. If you have a quarterback, like at Tennessee, they have Harrison Bailey. And you hear over and over, well, he's not ready. The offense is too complex for him. Everything is hard for him. And eventually the kid is going to believe it. Whenever he plays, he's going to perform like he's in over his head. Don't say things like that. Psychology. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The reality is, if he has the job, you're going to uncomplicate the offense to make it easier on him. But his confidence is going to already be shook because he's heard over and over again about how he's not ready. Don't do that. Don't do that. But on the defense line, there are some studs coming in. 4 or 5 players. And they will be players. They recruited a certain type of, a DJ Durkin type of guy. That's the reason whenever it comes to having a bad year one, if somebody starts talking about changing the defensive coordinator, I immediately tune them out. Because they just are not really putting out they know what they're talking about. This should always be about systems. System. It's everything. And if you will listen to that and do that and root to that, and whenever you hire the next coach, remember that you will have a chance to progress as a program. No joke. But in the system that we have, we need to get D. Durkin and eventually Chris Partridge's guys. Because the thing is set up. DJ Durkin to get another head job and Chris Partridge move up and somebody to move behind him. It's all about continuity. That's the reason they're doing what they're doing. That, and they had the ability to pay Chris Partridge the amount of money that he wasn't getting before. And I mean, it legitimately works. But going back to the exit interview, the defensive line, the way it's constructed this season, I'm talking about at its best, Tisdale, Ryder Anderson, and Katie. This season just didn't work at all. Now, you need more walkthroughs, you need more of whatever to get it through. Ends basically the buck and Tisdale is back. Ryder Anderson grad transferred, and Katie Hill is obviously in the middle. That's 2 places for Jamar Gordon and Isaiah to play. Then all of a sudden you have guys that get after the quarterback a little bit. You're not having to worry about so double teams. And if you can do that and speed up things, disaster games do not happen. If you can get pressure on the quarterback, disaster games do not happen. Remember also, this is to be said as well, those guys had no chance to gel. Trial by fire. Opened with Florida. There was no South Alabama for them to get things going. There was no cake. There was no 1AA. It was straight to Florida. And then game 3, Alabama. I mean, it's hard to gel under those circumstances. So, D for the defensive line. POMcast, Stephen Willis, stick around.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you, being the glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida Choice Independent Insurance Agents.
Hey, this is Steve Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. Men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran or are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-48-VET. Thank you.
POMcast, Stephen Will, thank you so much for joining us. We're having a good time, just so you know. I've got boxes all in my house, even in the palatial Central Florida studio at the moment. So, we're dealing with that moment. A little checkerboard table that I basically got from my mom that has now lived in 3 states. That's impressive. I think it has lived in Italy as well. So that's kind of cool. But there's a piece of furniture that's been all over the world. That's kind of neat. But anyway, we started segment 1 talking about Ole Miss's disappointing loss at Florida. We talked a little bit about the defensive line exit interviews. They were the problem child of the defense, and have a lot of work to do to get better next year. Fired Deke Adams, and they haven't hired an assistant to replace him, but I believe it might be Marquise Watson, the GA, that went in. He's kind of a rising star in the industry. If he gets the job, he will have earned the job and is willing to be. It's not worth being questioned. Bladian has gone to Texas. He was basically a special teams coach and a position that wasn't really named on defense. It was kind of a defensive assistant. Basically what it was, a gun recruiter. I expect to see them go down a similar road to that, to find the next Blake Gideon, and I do believe it will be in Texas. As you see, there's roots in Florida, there's roots in Texas, and other than Mississippi, those are the 2 places they're going to hit pretty hard. Chris Richards' roots in Georgia, Nick's Alabama. So, that's something to look at when they replace the position. They're going to find a hired gun recruiter to go out and find super athletes, and they're probably going to find guys that have relationships to who they have did for a certain period of time. So, if somebody has been talking to him and has developed a good rapport, and Ole Miss is recruiting that guy, look for that person to switch over. Especially after maybe Tom Herman or somebody got fired. That staff's probably looking on it, and he probably has some kind of a background in Texas recruiting. Even though our guy just went to Texas, so it'd be a swap. But it's something like that, I would imagine. And whenever they do that, realize this takes time, people. I know everybody wants a quick fix, and everything's about right now. I understand that. But as a program, we're not where we want to be. We won't be where we want to be for another year or two, if it all just builds upon it. If there's mistakes, it could take longer. And this is outside of Lane Kiffin being the coach. We need to stop looking at it as something that's just led by a coach. A mercenary for a couple of years, you have a run, and then you drop back down a bit. That's a problem, and that's a mindset. And it's also a mind problem whenever, let's say Hugh Freeze leaves, and they want to completely hire somebody that runs a completely different system, which is guaranteed a rebuild. There could have been good players there, but it guarantees a rebuild. Hugh Freeze would probably promote Matt Luke up. Luke, obviously, he was an offensive line coach. He was not somebody that was going on the air raid. He was not somebody that was going to deal with Wesley McCray defense. It was a problem. They didn't want to change systems, but they hired somebody that not what they wanted to do. And last year you can see that because they went to Rich Rod and Mike McIntyre, and that was how they want it to play. That shows you the length and depth of system problems in place at Ole Miss in 2019. Now, this is pretty obviously the offensive system we want to run. If something happens and Lane moves on in a couple years, we need to find somebody that does this same thing or something very similar to it. And don't worry if they have a head coaching experience. Don't worry about anything, because this is about making Ole Miss program advance. You do that by steadily inclining, no matter who is in charge. You can't throw all away on a system change. Just because somebody's winning somewhere else, that doesn't mean they're going to win where you are. And in doing so, if they're different than what you're doing already, it's going to be harder for them to win. People realize Chad Morris at Arkansas's failure wasn't because he was a terrible coach. It was they were trying to run a spread with Brett Bielema's personnel. I mean, it was a 3-year build at a minimum. But then the media turned on them, and the fans turned on them, and the immediate gratification people turned on them. And there was no way that the transition can happen. Be all in. If you are serious about your program advancing, you've got to all in. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. This has been the POMcast. I'm Steven. Have a good one. Hotty toddy.